Welcome back to the Sharing English podcast, where we explore stories from the English-speaking world, spoken slowly and clearly for curious English learners like you. Let's get started. Hey everyone, it's your host Freya. I'd like to begin today's episode with a quote that has always resonated with me. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. Those words were written by one of America's greatest authors, Mark Twain. Twain believed that seeing new places and meeting new people could change the way we think about the world. I think that's a wonderful message, and one that fits perfectly with the spirit of this podcast. Many people know Mark Twain as the author of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. But before he became a famous writer, he was a printer's apprentice, a riverboat pilot, a journalist, a world traveler, a lecturer, and one of the sharpest observers of American life. Today, we're going to explore the man behind the famous pen name, discover how he helped create a distinctly American literary voice, and learn why his books continue to be read and debated around the world. Mark Twain wasn't born with that name. His real name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens, and he was born in 1835 in the state of Missouri. When he was still a young boy, his family moved to the small river town of Hannibal on the banks of the mighty Mississippi River. If you've ever read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, you've already visited Hannibal, at least in disguise. The fictional town of St. Petersburg is largely based on Twain's childhood home. The caves, the river, the adventures, the friendships, and even many of the characters were inspired by the people and places he knew growing up. To understand Mark Twain, we have to understand the Mississippi River. Today, many people think of it as simply a famous river. But during Twain's lifetime, it was one of the busiest transportation routes in North America. Long before interstate highways or commercial air travel, the Mississippi was America's highway. Steamboats carried cotton, timber, grain, passengers, mail, and countless other goods between towns and cities. Communities along the river grew because of trade, and for many young boys, including Samuel Clemens, working on a steamboat seemed like one of the most exciting jobs imaginable. Twain eventually became a licensed riverboat pilot. It was difficult work. Pilots had to memorize thousands of miles of river, constantly watching for changing sandbars, fallen trees, and shifting channels. One mistake could sink a boat. This is where his famous pen name comes from. River workers measured the river's depth using a weighted rope. When they called out, "Mark Twain," they were announcing that the water measured 2 fathoms, or about 12 feet, or roughly 4 meters deep. That was generally considered safe water for navigation. Samuel Clemens loved the phrase so much that he adopted it as his pen name, and that's how the world came to know him as Mark Twain. Twain's life changed dramatically with the outbreak of the American Civil War in 1861. River traffic slowed, trade was disrupted, the career he loved effectively disappeared. Like many Americans of his generation, Twain suddenly found himself living in a country transformed by war. Looking for new opportunities, he traveled west to the territories of Nevada and later California. He briefly tried mining during the gold rush era, but wasn't very successful. Fortunately for readers everywhere, he turned to journalism instead. Writing newspaper articles allowed him to combine careful observation with humor, two skills that would eventually make him one of the world's most famous authors. Mark Twain's first major success came with a humorous travel book called The Innocents Abroad, which poked fun at Americans who had traveled to different parts of the world back during his day. But today, he is best remembered for two novels, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. At first glance, they seem like simple adventure stories about boys growing up along the Mississippi River. There are treasure hunts, mischievous pranks, caves, rafts, and unforgettable adventures. But beneath those adventures, Twain was exploring much bigger ideas. He wrote about friendship, freedom, growing up, right and wrong, and the contradictions of American society. Perhaps no relationship in American literature is more famous than that between Huck Finn and Jim, an enslaved man seeking freedom. As the two traveled down the Mississippi River together, Huck begins questioning many of the beliefs he has grown up with. For generations, readers have seen this journey not only as an adventure, but also as a moral journey. One reason Mark Twain became so influential is that he changed the way Americans wrote. Before Twain, many American authors tried to imitate British writers. They often used formal language and literary styles borrowed from Europe. Twain did something revolutionary. He wrote the way Americans actually spoke. His books were filled with regional accents, everyday conversations, local humor, and ordinary people. Instead of pretending the United States sounded like England, Twain embraced the country's own voices. For English learners, this is one reason his books remain so fascinating. They're not simply stories. They're snapshots of how Americans actually spoke during the 19th century. In many ways, Mark Twain helped give American literature its own identity. One of Twain's greatest novels, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, continues to be discussed and sometimes debated in classrooms today. The novel contains racist language, including repeated use of a racial slur that is deeply offensive today. Many readers understandably find that language difficult or painful. Others argue that removing the book from classrooms would erase an important historical critique of slavery and racism. After all, Twain wasn't celebrating racism. He was exposing the injustice of the society in which his characters lived. There isn't one simple answer to this debate, but understanding the historical context helps us understand why the novel remains both important and challenging. Now, do you remember the quote we began with? Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. Mark Twain practiced what he preached. Throughout his life, he traveled extensively across Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. Many of those journeys became books filled with humor, curiosity, and sharp observations about different cultures. Although some of his perspectives reflect the attitudes of his own time, he consistently encouraged readers to broaden their horizons and question their assumptions. It's a message that still feels remarkably modern. If you're learning English, you might be wondering whether Mark Twain is worth reading. My answer is yes, but choose your starting point carefully. I would recommend beginning with The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Its language is generally more accessible and its story is easier to follow. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is more challenging. Twain intentionally wrote many characters using regional dialects and 19th century speech patterns. Even native English speakers sometimes need a little patience with this book. So don't worry if you don't understand every word. Reading Mark Twain isn't just about learning vocabulary. It's about experiencing American history culture, humor, and storytelling. Mark Twain once wrote that travel could change the way we see the world. His books have been doing exactly that for more than a century. Through stories of boys on the Mississippi River, ordinary people, memorable adventures, and unforgettable humor, he helped readers understand America and perhaps even themselves a little better. More importantly, he showed that American stories didn't have to sound British to be great literature. They could sound like the people who actually lived them. And in doing so, Mark Twain helped America find its literary voice. Now I'm curious, who is a writer from your country that you think captures its culture, humor, or way of speaking especially well? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for listening to the Sharing English podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share the podcast with a friend who's also learning English. You can find out more about me and the podcast at our website, www.sharing-english.com. New episodes of the Sharing English podcast are available weekly wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, let me know, what topics are you interested in hearing more about? Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep sharing English.